Eagles. Eagles.
Draft Day 2024 is here on Birds 365. The final breadcrumbs and nuggets are being picked up right now to figure out what the Eagles will do tonight. While we don't have a definitive answer, we have a team of people that are going to discuss it with us, including some good ones today. John McMullen, coming up at 8:40, is a man who went through the draft process and can tell us a little bit about what it's like to kind of go through all of the steps and play in this league. Former NFL free agent tight end Colin Thompson from Not For Long Media is going to tell us a little bit about his journey at 8:40 today. And then in the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to talk to Andrew DeCecco, who is one of the great local draft minds when it comes to the NFL draft. So we'll get his take on it all. But as usual, John, there is so much in the final day leading up to it. Everybody's got their final mock drafts and all the latest little buzz that everybody's listening to. So what is chirping in your ear on this Thursday morning as we get set for a 2-hour journey on Birds 365?
Well, I'm first excited we finally made it with draft day. It's always exciting because I think, and you can talk about this, Mike, I think it's the most overanalyzed thing in all of sports. I really do. It's just,
of course. I mean,
yeah,
you got a Sixer game tonight. You looked at the game that they lost, and now you're getting ready for the next one. At least the next one is today. Yeah. This draft has been basically put in place since the quieting of, it really starts before free agency. Some people get into it when their team is eliminated from the playoffs. So luckily the Eagles made the playoffs and gave you one less week of draft conversation.
Yeah. And, even if you think about the ramp up to the Super Bowl, when you're there, you have the extra week and that's overanalyzed, but this gets to the point, the NFL draft, where it's just, so much. And then you ramp it up in the final hours, the final days, and there's always the small shifts at the end, like J.C. Latham, who was that's the most interesting one to me. Texting with a bunch of people yesterday, there is a lot of groundswell that he's going to be a top 5 pick, which if you would have told me that 2 weeks ago, I would have said you're nuts. Very good player, very good prospect. One of the cloud of prospects I think the Eagles have interest in. But and the Los Angeles Chargers need help on the offensive line drastically. Jim Harbaugh's a little off the wall, shall we say? And a lot of people are making that marriage, J.C. Latham to the Chargers at number 5 overall. And if that happens, that'll be the first wow moment, I think, of the draft, where somebody goes off schedule, so to speak. And we'll see. There's still the trade ups in Minnesota trying to get a quarterback, and how much is Kwesi Adofo-Mensah going to overpay for Drake May? Can he get up? Because the Patriots even want to trade him because they desperately need a quarterback at number 3 overall. I guess there's a little bit, I would say maybe 10% that Washington could come off Jaden Daniels and go towards Drake May or J.J. McCarthy, simply because people are saying Josh Harris is very involved down there. Now, hey, Mike, that's a good thing when you compare him to Daniel Snyder, but it's never a good thing as a whole if you got an owner sticking his nose in at number 2 overall. So a little bit, I would call that very minimal, maybe 10%. So, but there's going to be curveballs. And with the Philadelphia Eagles, look, they're trying to trade up. I don't think there's any question about that. We talked about yesterday on the show. Most likely spots are number 12 with Denver, number 16 with Seattle. And then you talk about the players they would be targeting. Most likely Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold at corner. Most likely J.C. Latham, who might be out of the equation now. and Talisi Buaga at offensive line. So we'll see how it shakes out. But and not Buaga, I'm getting them mixed up. I always get there's so many Samoan offensive linemen.
Yes,
But
Fuagu. Well, he could be in the mix.
he
That's
could
Oregon
be,
State.
but I don't
I
think
think you're talking about
I'm
Troy
sorry, Troy
Fatanu,
Fatano. Yeah.
Washington. Yes,
Troy Fatano.
Oregon State. Fatanu is Washington.
By the way, never rule out any offensive lineman. So obviously, well, you can rule out Joe Alt because he's not going
Well,
to
I
be
mean,
anywhere.
we'll kind of like throughout the day, I'm sure they'll all be, Albert Beer puts out one mock draft, and I like Albert's work. Today, he gave Philadelphia Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle from Georgia. I just don't like his reasoning. Basically, the Georgia thing is that, hey, the Eagles have gone down the Georgia road a lot.
Well,
But
then you
Mims,
might as well go Brock Bowers at that
well,
point. Straight
yesterday,
up. Yeah.
and we talked about it a little bit, but that's what Dan Graziano basically said. Hey, we're hearing some buzz that the Eagles could trade up for a wide receiver. And some of the buzz is Brock Bowers. And, that is also a Georgia tie, Brock Bowers. So, all of these little things as we kind of get there. You mentioned the two spots, 11 with the Jets.
12 would be Denver. That's where
Denver.
I think the Eagles would be. I think Denver wants to trade down a little bit, and then you become a little bit. I think they want Bo Nix, so I don't think they'd be comfortable taking him at 12, but they probably would at 22. So I think there's a team looking to go down, but there's a lot of teams calling Denver. Indianapolis is calling Denver with her old friend Shane Steichen, Pittsburgh with Denver as well. So, there's other teams trying to go up and get players as well. So you have to mix into that. And then 16 Seattle. I mean, John Snyder's always looking to move down.
And keep in mind, John, with Seattle is they don't have a second round pick. So they would make a good trade partner if you need to give up a second round pick. Seattle would probably be you always talk about you need a second team, someone to pick up the phone. Seattle probably calls and listens at 16 and says, if you give us a second round pick and we can move into the second round, we're willing to listen to what you have. So if you have a player on the board, you're watching this draft tonight, everybody, and 16 comes and you've got Mitchell or Arnold or one of these offensive linemen, you better run to the prop table and say, I'm doing a prop that the Eagles will move off the pick, and 16 is probably it. That seems like a highly likely scenario.
Yeah, I mean, in my Eagles only mock, I went up to 12 because I'm in that mindset, and I think Howie's in that mindset. If you like the player, go get him, and don't mess around. And I think people don't realize, the league. Our old friend of the show, Brad Spielberger's moved on from PFF, and now he's working for an agency. So he doesn't do much media work anymore. But he and Jason Fitzpatrick from Over the Cap did a new sort of trade chart that's more analytically based, more forward thinking, that you would think more teams would use, but they still use the Jimmy Johnson chart. They still do. There's newer guys, I should say, who try to be more forward thinking about it. But if you use the Johnson trade chart, and that's what most of the NFL does, and certainly I think that's what Denver would do and Seattle with more old school approaches. It takes basically 50 and then 171 to get up to 12. That's it. That's it. It's not this. I've seen a lot of fans speak. Oh, you're going to have to give up so much. No, you're not. And the Eagles aren't focused on volume as a team that doesn't have a lot of open spots. So if they like a player, and again, the other thing I want to bring up, Mike, people get caught up in the position. Ain't about a position when you're going up. It's about a player you like. Mm-hmm. So, if they like Mitchell, they're going to try to go up and get Mitchell. If they like Botano, they're going to try to go up and get him. It's about the player, and it's not about, you might like, as I do, Kaylee Ringo as a potential upsize, or Isaiah Rodgers, as a lot of Eagles fans like, and say, well, they don't need a corner. It ain't about the position. Forget about the position. It's about the player.
Let me, by the way, Field Yates, his mock draft out this morning, as many people are putting out their final mock. It's like Christmas Day. Everybody's getting milk and cookies and putting them on the table for Santa Claus to come down here and kind of chomp away at them. So I'm going to take a bite of the cookie here. Trade Eagles to 16. Again, this is a mock trade. This is not real life here, but we like to have fun. I'll participate, John. Eagles, this is interesting because they trade – they're 22. They flip spots and 50. So as we had Brookie on yesterday, don't trade 53. That's been a good spot for you.
Yeah.
Move to 50. So 22 and 50 to Seattle for 16 and 81. I think getting the 81 in return there makes that something that you're like, that's a no-brainer, right? I mean, you're still in the second round at 53. And then you get that 81 selection, so it gives you another, top 100 pick, and you get to move up to get the guy that you want. I mean, if that trade is something that can be pulled off, something in that kind of realm, I think that sounds like a great day for Howie.
Well, let's do it. Let's do the math through the Jimmy Johnson trade.
I don't want to be involved in any math. I'll leave that to you.
So you said 50 and 22. So 22 is 780. 50 is 400. So that's 1180. That's what that is worth. And then you're getting back 16, which is 1,081, which is 185. So 1185. So it's in the realm. A little bit of an edge for the Eagles. You can kick in a seventh. They don't have a 7th round pick, maybe a 6th round pick, 170, 171.
Right.
It's in the realm. And yeah, I mean, those are the two teams. If you're watching, if you want to watch the Sixers and you want to check in when the Eagles are going to go, obviously you can't just assume they're going to go with 22, but keep an eye on 12.
2024. We're going 2 devices today.
Well, you go 2 devices. Well, however you want to do it. But pay attention.
The Sixers game will be on the big TV, and the draft will be on my trusty laptop that is sitting in front of me to do Birds 365.
The larger thing is pay attention at 12 and 16. So if you're focused in on the Sixers, and by the way, you should focus in on the NFL draft, because you've already seen that movie. That's like your favorite. That's why I said, Mike, it's like your favorite syndicated TV show. Mine is Seinfeld. You've seen it again and again and again and again and again and again, and you're going to see it again tonight.
Well, I do have another job that I have to tend to both.
I'm talking to the fans. I'm not talking. You have to watch it.
I don't understand why the NBA goes up against. I love the draft. I love sitting there watching I loved it when we talked about this yesterday, when it was Saturday and Sunday, and you would sit there all afternoon, Saturday and Sunday, and just get immersed in it. You can't get that immersed feeling with the way that they do it now. It's like you're there. It kind of is moving.
No, it's
late at night.
It's terrible.
You're actually waiting for it to end. You're like, get this over with. But I agree with you. Be it paying attention. I want to kind of quickly go through the top 10, John, and just kind of see if any of these teams kind of, jump off the page as movers, shakers. Are we all in the camp that 1, 2, and 3 are going to be quarterbacks?
Yes. Yes. I think 100%.
No surprises there.
No, I don't. As I said, very small chance Washington comes off Daniels, but they're still taking a quarterback. Okay. In New England, it's either going to be New England or Minnesota's going to give up, 2 first-round picks this year, a first-round pick next year, and probably something else to go up and get Drake May. So either way, it's going to be a quarterback.
All right. So then 4 would be Arizona. They could start the position players here, which is going to be, I think, a historic offensive draft. I mean, in terms of volume, you don't have a defensive player in the mix, possibly. We'll take a look at this here. But this is something that should help Philadelphia with a lot of the defensive players not taking a look here. But Arizona, many people think it could be Harrison or a wide receiver in that spot.
Yeah, I don't think it's any doubt if they stay in that 4th spot, it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. But, are they going to stay? There's, a lot of talk that there's not as much difference as a lot of fans think between Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and even Adunze as the top 3 receivers. So if Arizona's comfortable, moving down to 11, Minnesota could move up there. Does somebody else want JJ McCarthy? A lot of people speculated the Giants might want JJ McCarthy. So the draft sort of starts, I would say, at number 4 in Arizona. And, Arizona might say, we're just taking our guy and take Marvin Harrison Jr. But there's a lot of good receivers. We talk about blue chippers in this draft. Most people have those 3 receivers as blue chip players. So you probably can't go wrong with any of the 3. And that means they might trade down and take advantage of it.
All right. You mentioned J.C. Latham. Field Yates mock draft has him going number 5 to the Chargers.
A lot of people have shifted to J.C. Latham to the Chargers. I thought it was interesting. I saw an interview with Joe Alt, who's probably the best offensive lineman. Not probably. He's the best offensive lineman in the draft. He's one of the safest prospects in the draft. Very high floor, very high ceiling, true blue chip player. He didn't visit with the Chargers. Now, people make, I think, too much out of those top 30 visits, but they could just be trying to throw people off the scent. But I think Jim Harbaugh is nutty enough to go in a different direction. And there's so many plugged in people. I think you mentioned Albert. I think Albert had J.C. Latham there, or Schefter, one of the 2. Maybe Jeremiah also had Latham going to the Chargers. A lot of plugged in people have made that shift in their mock drafts late. And I think there might be something to it.
All right. 6 is the interesting spot. I don't know if any of those first 5 jump off the page as, man, this will be must-see TV to see what they do. But when the Giants pick at number 6, I guess in the NFC East, that kind of unlocks a lot of things for the next portion of the draft. What do the Giants do? They have a ton of needs, John. And right up the turnpike there, the New York Giants could go any myriad of ways here.
Yeah, I to me, for the Giants, it's, do they want to go quarterback and pull the plug on Daniel Jones and think about JJ McCarthy, or they're going to take the second receiver?
Can I ask you about Jones? He took him to the playoff the 1 year. He was okay, not great. They thought enough to pay him. Have they done him enough to evaluate him enough? Have they put enough around him? Has the line been there? Do they have enough, to truly evaluate, to just dump him for any of these options?
Well,
and I'm not saying I'm a big Daniel Jones fan, but
it depends. I get it. With the Giants, and we've been talking about it with Saquon coming to the Eagles. I mean, there's so many excuses with the New York Giants. I mean, at some point, and I bring this up all the time, there's certain guys who are so good they make the bows. Jason Kelsey talked about it. Fletcher Cox, Jason Peters. they would be successful in any scheme. If you're a true star, this has more to do with Saquon than Daniel Jones, but still, if you're a true star, you're going to find a way to at least be somewhat successful. With Daniel Jones, it's clear he's not a star. So it becomes, where do you want to go? How much do you believe in J.J. McCarthy as a potential future superstar quarterback in this league? I don't have a ton of belief in that. I think he's, he barely played. They took the ball out of his hands. Not he played all the time, but they took the ball out of his hands. And in the biggest spots with Michigan, they went old school, which you can't do in the NFL. That's a red flag to me. And then they haven't shown the ability as an organization to cultivate a young quarterback with Daniel Jones. So what makes you think they could do it with J.J. McCarthy?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the Giants, I just take the blue chip guy, and that would be Malik Neighbors. He's my number 2. So a little bit, but they could take a Dunze, and I'd say the same thing. So one of those two guys, if you're the New York Giants, I that I can't go down the same wormhole with JJ McCarthy. And then you start talking about Barkley's not there, and you don't want to add Neighbors, so he doesn't have weapons, and you're already starting the excuse machine.
Yeah. Well, I not that I think he's a superstar or anything special, but they did pay him. So at somewhere along the line in that organization, they felt enough comfort with him to give him that money. You would think that you would at least give him the opportunity to have some substance of an offense around him. I mean, for God's sakes, they've had no line, no wide receivers there. So maybe he's better than he's shown. He did help you get to the playoffs one year. Hey, by the way, if you're an Eagles fan, you probably want the Giants to keep Daniel Jones and keep moving in that direction. After them, it seems that there's a pocket of teams, John, that Tennessee seems to be a really safe bet to go offensive line here, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it falls out, if the Chargers pass on Joe Alt, I'm going to say 100% Tennessee drafts him at number 7. So I think that's the floor for him as a player, as a prospect in this draft. And, that's your starting left tackle. That's one of those positions also that you almost guarantee a second contract. Nobody complains about paying left tackles. So you got a left tackle for the next decade, hopefully. And that's never sexy, but that would be a very, very good pick for the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, 8 is Atlanta, and I guess this could be somebody trying to swoop into this spot because at this point, from what we've just discussed, players are starting to drop. You're at the 8th spot. Somebody you have ranked in your top 5 is now probably sprinkled down to the 8th spot with Atlanta. So Atlanta seems to be a spot where you want to have your device or your TV locked in on a potential move for somebody, probably not Philadelphia, going up from 22 to 8. They probably have to jump twice to do that, which they've done in the past, by the way. But 8 would be maybe one of the first trade possibilities. There could be others.
Well, I think the trade possibilities start at 4, 5. It all depends on, how nervous Minnesota gets in trying to get that 4th quarterback. So are they nervous enough to go up to number 4, number 5, number 8? Or do they sit and call everybody's bluff and hope McCarthy falls to number 11, which, by the way, I think is very possible because Atlanta's not, they just signed Kirk Cousins from Minnesota. They're not looking for a quarterback. The Bears got their quarterback at number 1 overall. The Jets have Aaron Rodgers. Nobody's taking a quarterback. Even Tennessee, as I said, maybe they should think about taking a quarterback, but they're not. And the one sort of curveball could be the Giants, as we mentioned at number 6, if they believe in the player. And but you also have to worry about other teams, and particularly Denver moving up. So how does that sort of standoff between those two quarterback desperate teams what does that make each of them do?
Yeah.
If Atlanta's forced to stay, you're probably looking at the first defensive player coming off the board. But if I'm Atlanta, I can go down to 11. I'm still going to get that defensive player and extra draft capital. So I would certainly think about it.
Yeah. Well, real quick, in the Albert Breer mock draft, he has the Giants taking Rome Odunze. In the Field Yates mock draft, he has them going with Malik Neighbors. Their top 5, I believe, are identical. Both have Latham going 5, Harrison 4, Drake May 3, Jaden Daniels 2, and of course Caleb Williams 1. So they are in the same spot except for 6. Neighbors in Fields and Odunze in Albert's mock draft, but all there. And then in the 8th spot, Albert, I don't believe, has trades in his. So he has the Falcons going with Dallas Turner, which would be the first, John, I bring this up because he's the first defensive player taken in this particular, in Field Yates. He actually has a trade with Minnesota moving up to take J.J. McCarthy. So this is where the draft could take a little bit of a shift. If you take another quarterback, that drops more players towards Philadelphia. If you maybe stay in that spot, maybe Atlanta takes a defensive player.
Yeah, and that's why mock drafts are an exercise in futility. Like Albert's, like I love Albert Breer. He's more plugged in than anybody, but there's going to be trades. So how relevant if you're going to do a non-trade mock draft? How is that? So you talk about the players, and Fields on the right, sort of as I mentioned with Minnesota. All of these teams, 4, 5, 8 potential trade teams. Minnesota's in the conversation to go up because they're so quarterback desperate. Same thing with Denver, although most thoughts around the league are, and even the Raiders as well at 13, but it seems like the Raiders really like Michael Penix Jr. And the Broncos seem to like Bo Nix. So, do they really like these players, or are they talking themselves into these players?
Right.
I don't know.
We'll wrap up the top 10 here. We're going to get to Colin Thompson in about 10 minutes, who free agent NFL tight end, played with Carolina, was in camp with the Vikings last season. We'll get his thoughts on the whole draft process. And, do players hear these rumors? Do they hear what's going on draft day? When you're on a team, what's it like being on a team on the day of the draft when you are wondering, they're going to take my position? By the way,
you're Aaron Rodgers. You settle back and drink a scotch.
Put your feet up. Yeah. Both Albert Breer in his one and only mock has Neighbors going to the Bears, and in Field Yates' final mock, he has Odunze going there. So both have the Bears taking a wide receiver, which makes a lot of sense. They do not have,
they got DJ Moore.
I would say they did get they did have some weapons last year. They could use some offensive line help.
Yeah, I would. If I'm the Bears, I'm going offensive line.
Right.
No question about it. And pick your favorite player. It could be Fashanu, it could be Fuaga. I'm going offensive line.
Number 10 to the Jets, which is Fashanu, who you just mentioned. That would make some sense to the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Get him some protection. The Penn State offensive tackle in Field Yates. He actually has the Colts trading here to get Brock Bowers at number 10 in the draft.
Well, I got to tell you, Joe Douglas was here. Now, Joe was obviously GMing for his job. That would lead me to offensive line. Same thing. You got to protect Aaron Rodgers. For all the talk of him playing 4 plays last year, Mike, and he got hurt on the 4th. He was under siege in the first 3 as well. I believe it was ridiculous. They better protect that guy. And I think that's Joe's mindset. But again, not sexy. So everybody talks about the receiver. And both of these teams, the Jets and the Bears, let's be honest, are not bastions of well-run history recently. So
Hmm.
but if I'm both of them, I take offensive linemen, and they both might go skill position people because they're dumb.
All right, that's the look at the first 10 spots in the draft and some expository on what could happen there. We think the first 3 picks seem to be pretty bang, bang, bang. And then after that, some things could start to happen. You get to 10, and then boom. Now you start to get into that trade up spot for Philadelphia. We'll examine that. Next hour, we'll talk to Andrew DeCecco from InsideTheBirds.com, who does a great job. In fact, he'll be on with me today for Football at 4. We do every Thursday, Andrew and I, on Football at 4. So I know Andrew really well, and he is very, very deep depth of knowledge when it comes to the college game and the college players. In fact, we could talk a lot. Probably he would like to talk more about day 3 when it comes to some of those prospects.
Andrew's our day 3 guy, man. Get some of these lottery tickets in the 3rd round.
If you like the conversation with Andrew, we'll further it today at 4 o'clock on the radio. But coming up at 8:40 today, we're going to talk to free agent NFL tight end Colin Thompson, who has his own media empire. It's called Not For Long Media. He tells a lot of stories about what it's like to go through the NFL and go through different training camps and bounce around. He played in the XFL, the AAF. He's been in multiple training camps. So a guy who's been through it is going to join us coming up in about 7 minutes from now here on Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, back here on Birds 365 on this day of the NFL draft. It is finally here, John McMullen. And you know who is finally here? It is Colin Thompson, free agent NFL tight end, not for long media. He is building the media empire as we get ready for the NFL draft. But, it is great to see you, my friend. How are you, man?
Guys, great to be back. Two of my favorites in sports media, of course. Two guys I've worked a ton with, and it's great to be back on the show.
Yeah, it's good to see you, buddy. Exciting day, too. Draft day. Take us through that from a player's perspective and what it's like to sit around. Obviously, your stage when you were coming out, you weren't going to be on day one. It shifted. It's not as fun as it used to be where you had Saturday and Sunday. But what, from a player's perspective, when you're waiting for that call, what's it like? You got friends and family around. Everybody's different. But how did you handle it?
Yeah, so I actually handle it not too far from where you guys are at in Cape May, New Jersey. We're at my parents' house down there, and I knew I was going to be undrafted. But how that goes, and for those that don't know, about a third to sometimes a little bit more of the NFL is undrafted football players, which is crazy because we put such a precedence on this NFL draft thing and all the underwear Olympics and the combine and the 40s, and most of the undrafted guys, for whatever reason, don't go. So we were down in Cape May, and I would say the part of the story is for the undrafted guy, about 72 hours before, teams start to call out of nowhere, right? You'd be like, hi, this is so-and-so from the Atlanta Falcons. I'll never forget that one. I'm like working out. I'm like, okay. He's like, yeah, just want to know what your draft day phone number is. I don't know. They have my number. Yeah. And they want to know, just whatever. What are you doing? What's your plans? How you feeling? What's your update? Right? Because what they're doing is, and you'll get a call I told my agent, I'm like, there's been 25 teams. I'm barely supposed to go undrafted.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is fishing, almost recruiting in a way that, hey, listen, you're going to go undrafted. And if you're available, we want you to think Atlanta Falcons or Philadelphia Eagles, or for my case, it was the New York Giants, because you're like, oh, like you're almost like, oh, they called me, like they want me, Well, really, you're just the tight end that fell through the cracks, and they're like, oh, this is our top guy on the board that's still available. So I got a bunch of calls about 72 hours before, and then on draft day, on the third day, on the final day, my agent's like, you may get taken here. We got teams calling, like, what's Colin doing? How's he feeling? You get to the later rounds, right? They start finding guys for select things. So if you have a completed roster, Colin's blocking tight end, we need a guy that can come in on third and short and get things done, whatever. That's what my agents are telling me that they're calling about. And of course they're saying, we may take you with this next pick. Every undrafted player and every guy that I played in the XFL with tells the same story. Well, in the sixth round, the Broncos called, and they have the next 3 picks. And, they're thinking about, they didn't take me though, but they said they were going to, right? We all had the same one.
Yeah.
In my case, I had the same story where we're sitting there like in the 6th round, and we know I'm not getting taken. We're just waiting around for the undrafted part. And my phone rings. I'm in Denver, or I think it was Denver. It was like, hey, they got 3 picks here in the 6th round. Like, Colin, you may be one of them. My agents are calling me. I'm like, no way. You got to be shit. It gets a little hype in the room. Yeah. And then it comes back to reality. The draft ends.
Well, that was my next question. How did they approach it? Because when they want you as an undrafted guy, they don't wait till after the draft. So in the 7th round, those calls start to come in. Do they approach it that way and saying, hey, we might take you here, but if not, start thinking about the New York Giants?
Yeah, that's exactly how it went. So for me, it was the Rams, which, again, it wasn't the Rams at the time that they are now. It doesn't matter. I didn't care at that point either. I make that clear. It was the Rams, the Raiders, and the Giants. Now, the Rams and Raiders, 0 contact with me at all through it. I had a rookie mini camp where I had a rookie local tryout with the Jets, did horrible. It was like horrible footwork drills that to me had nothing to do with tight end stuff. No disrespect to that tight end coach, but we ran around cones the whole time, and I'm not that guy. And I get that. That's a valued thing, but that's not for me as a physical tight end. So I didn't do well there. I did okay with the Eagles, and I haven't had a ton of contact with the Eagles throughout my career, just a little bit, but the Giants contacted a lot through the process. I had a lot of mutual friends there through Kevin Gilbride, who coached at Temple. Rule coached with the Giants 3 years before that as the assistant line coach. So a lot of the Temple guys were getting a lot of Giants love because Rule could speak about all of us. So to move the story along, it was those 3 teams in the undrafted process. My agent's like, listen, the Giants are the best deal. Also, Kevin Gilbride, tight end coach, works with my agents as well, right? So there's that rapport. This was Pro Star Sports at the time, my agency at the time. And yeah, they're just like, my agent's like, we're going to take this deal. I'm like, what do you mean? What's the deal? They're like, hey, we're going to give, they're going to give you $4,500. I'm like, do we have a negotiation back? They're like, no, it's great. You're a rookie minicamp guy holding a bag in a tryout. And now you're going to sign a contract and probably not get cut during the rookie minicamp because they gave you some cash a little bit.
Yeah. Andrew Brandt's got that great story where he wanted to sign somebody and he was giving him like $5,000. And the poor guy was saying, well, can I have a couple weeks to come up with the money? And he's like, no, we're paying you.
That's how it went. So I took the 4,500 and it was an amazing day. We went to the old Sea View down there in Cape May, pumped the jukebox full of money and sang till 2 a.m. Like I was the first pick overall. And it was something I'll never forget. We got great pictures. One of our friends, these are all diehard, even though nobody cared. I was very emotional. A lot of those people have been with me through my entire career, which was full of ups and downs like the rest of us in the NFL. And one of the guys disappeared. I know it when one of our neighbors, he disappeared in the middle of it, right when the Giants thing was coming down, took off to the local sporting goods store, bought every piece of Giants memorabilia, shirts, hats, jerseys. So everybody at the Sea View for the one time and one time only was wearing Giants gear in Eagles Bar.
Nice.
So it was cool, and it's a memory I'll never forget. And went to the Giants, emergency appendectomy, and signed that nice $2 million deal, and only saw $4,500 out of it. So that's how it goes. And I was doing radio with you guys.
Yeah,
that's an NFL contract for you, right? It looks like this big
$2 million.
thing.
Yeah. You get
Colin Tufts, by the
4,500.
way, local guy. As he mentioned, Cape May, he trains there in his off seasons during his career, and then of course, where'd you go? Archbishop Ryan, right?
I went to Archbishop Wood, close.
Wood.
Yeah.
Up in Philly. Played at Florida and
Mhm.
then transferred to Temple. So local ties all over the place, down the Jersey Shore, the Philadelphia area. So you mentioned you've meandered through AAF, XFL. You land on the Carolina Panthers and spent 3 seasons in Carolina. So now it's draft day and you're on a team. What's it like for someone who's on a team when you're hearing all of the draft buzz? Give the people a little bit of insight on that kind of feeling. Is okay, I'm on this team and everyone is talking about what this team needs and what changes are coming. What's an offseason like for a player on a roster?
So 2020 season, I probably had my best year of football. We didn't have a ton of tight ends in the room in Carolina. It was blocking tight end Chris Manhertz, who's actually with the Giants now. He's a great blocking tight end, played basketball at Canisius College, didn't play football to the NFL. So I had that advantage over Chris, essentially with the now he was a great pro at the time. So I was like Chris, Ian Thomas, who I think is one of the more well-rounded tight ends in the league, got paid for it in Carolina. And then myself and a practice squad tight end. So 2020 played great. I'm coming back 2021, pretty much guaranteed for the roster. 6 months before that, I'm getting the XFL shutting down because of COVID. 6 months before that, the AAF's shutting down. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to make this. I'm doing radio with you guys, Tony Bruno. We're all over the place. So that's a little snippet into an NFL career and life. Right. And all of a sudden, like a year later, you're like, I'm good for the draft. Right. Like, you're not drafting a guy. I got a couple years left on a rookie deal. We got some depth in the room. We just signed receiving tight end Dan Arnold, who I'm shocked.
Dan Arnold. Yeah. He was here for a short period. You and I were talking about that. I love Dan Arnold as a receiver, but yeah, it didn't work out.
For the way the Eagles use tight ends, I thought they would have practice squatted him. Because Dan's a really good football player and tough. And I was shocked he didn't stick in Philly. That blew me away. And I think he's retired. He's going to coach D3 football.
I'm going to guess who you're going to bring up. Tommy Tremble.
100%.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct. So I'm sitting in the room, and I gave a little backstory because I think it's part of the story. So I'm sitting in the room. I'm happy. I got a text from a good friend of mine, and he's followed me through my whole career. And he's like, "What's the deal with draft? Can it affect you at all?" I said, "I don't think so. There's no real tight end in this draft that they would take that I think would affect me." But I remember this kid at Notre Dame, and everybody sent me his stuff. Everyone was sending me his video. Look at this guy. He's a nut job. He just runs through people, and he's physical. I'm like, he is nuts, and he runs really fast. He's a freak of nature. I'm like, no, I'm good. Literally 10 minutes later, third round comes around. They draft Tommy Tremble. I look him up real quick. I'm like, oh, no. I'm done. I'm toast. This kid's going to beat me out, right? And it's not to do with like he's a better player than me, better athlete than me and all that, but just numbers game, right? Third round pick. You're done. They gave him a bunch of money. And so I ended up being in and out of the active roster all year, which was a good run. I probably played like 13 games that year, inactive for a couple, and I was good. But the ripple effect was the next year, right? They draft another kid, right? And all of a sudden you're finding yourself kind of weaning out of the back of the room. So for your point, Mike, back to the question that of course I took forever to answer, is it's stressful in the sense that you can't worry about it. You got to control your own stuff, but your career and your fate could be decided like that with maybe a tight end in the 3rd round and a tight end in the 7th round. And you're like, well, I'm out of the room.
So what about, like, for instance, right now in Philly, Dallas Goedert, who's an established player, and you've been on my show many times saying how much, you think he's one of the top tight ends, all around tight ends in the league.
Yep.
But you hit an age in this league. Is he thinking, watching this draft tonight, thinking they're going to start looking for my replacement? Like, there's been some Brock Bowers talk. Now, they would have to move up probably to do so, but is he in a spot where they drafted him in the 2nd round, essentially to replace Zach Ertz? They ended up trading Ertz 2 years later. So
same age, by the way. They drafted Dallas Goedert when Zach was 29, coming off phenomenal seasons. He set the franchise record. And now Dallas is 29.
Yeah.
And, so they
guys, I'm 30. Yeah, that number, if you're 29 years old and 364 days, you're a young player in the NFL. If you're 30 years old, you're an old player in the NFL.
Yeah,
and it happens just like that. And it's just numbers. It's just facts. It's just over the years, right? They're doing it's just how it goes. And it sucks for a guy like me, who I'm actually in the best shape of my life. I feel better than I ever been. I know the game better than ever been, but the opportunities are less because, hey, there's 7 draft classes between you and the first time you came into this league. So for Dallas, right? Like, I think that was a value pick for Dallas, right? Like, he happened to be there in the 2nd round. They're like, holy cow, this guy, we have a 1st round grade on this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Dallas is a freak of nature, right? I was able to spend some time with Dallas this offseason. The guy's a freak of nature. Like, he's a different cat in the sense that, like, big, strong, fast, like kind of Gumby-ish, like long, like twitchy and strong. And like the Kittle's built like that. Like, a couple guys are built like that. Not everybody's built like that in this league. There's a couple guys that have had to earn it and like build themselves to be these big, strong dudes. But like, Dallas is like just a big dude and a really good player and physical. Like, he has all the attributes. He's got the attitude. Like, he's a good player. He'll play forever in this league probably. But you know how Howie Roseman works, right? So I'm sure they're gonna have to take a guy. Jack Stoll left, right? So
yeah,
I know they signed some guys that were kind of guys like me, right? In and off
TJ Uzama, who's
Rams, right? Or Denver.
Probably 32, 33. So it was kind of a weird signing for.
Yeah.
But he's played a lot of football. Yeah. With Dallas, I wanted to ask you, because you're right. He's so physical.
Yeah.
The past couple years, Colin, he's gotten hurt. Mm-hmm. And last year, he got hurt being physical. He wins those angry runs. Oh, I don't know if you see Kyle Brandy.
Oh, every morning. Guy's fantastic.
And he gave him the Angry Run Award twice. And one time when he won it is when he broke his forearm because he's destroying the guy.
Yeah.
And at some point as a player, when you're out there, when it comes to that physicality versus protecting yourself, how difficult is that line?
Well, for me, I don't play that line because I'll lose my job. But for a guy like him, he you have to be. It's a shame. It's really weird. It's like that core belief that got you to where you are. It'd be like you guys doing radio and you have a couple staples and I'm just going to change them because I'm getting a little longer in the tooth now and I don't want to get tired. It's like, well, no, that staples what got you there. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to sacrifice more, right? It's all the same thing in every profession. You have to pivot. And sometimes when you pivot, it's a 50-50 shot. You're playing the long game, right? So I have a good story here. I'm not going to name a franchise or I'm not going to name a player, but there's a guy I played with in the NFL who told me a story, and it was a previous team that he played with that they weren't allowed to run out of bounds as a tight end. Weren't allowed to. And that's a common thing in college, right? Very common. Running backs, tight ends, we don't run out of bounds. Receivers, run out of bounds. Don't get hurt. And that's changed over the years, right? This is a couple of years ago. And he said to me that one of their top tight ends didn't go out of bounds and ran through a guy and should have ran out of bounds and wanted to and ended up getting hurt and costing him pretty much the middle part of his career. Long story short, that player went and freaked out at that coach, right? Because you can do that in the NFL. It's not normal, but it happens a lot. And the tight end coach had to change his core beliefs because it took money out of that player's pocket, right? So fans don't see it because they want fantasy points and they want you to, whatever. It's no big deal. You run out of bounds and you would like if it's not like egregiously running out of bounds, right? Then it's no big deal. But now a lot of guys will jump out of bounds because, hey, we'll just play another down. We got to play fast. It's up tempo offense. Like that's what Chip Kelly was like. Just get out of bounds. Let's go. Let's move. So, it's a great question for Dallas, but I would suggest that, the older he gets, you got to be able to protect yourself a little bit more. You look at Travis Kelce. What makes Travis Kelce great is not that he's like straight line fast or big and strong, is he's like Gumby. I mean, the guy can just drop down and like miss a hit, and the guy can just like kind of suave out of the way and like, looks like there's 4 guys that are in gang tackle him and just tattoo him. And then he's just like, boop, I just fall. Like, that's what makes him great. That's what makes Christian McCaffrey, the older he's gotten, talking to him is like, I need to know how to like go numb when I'm getting tackled. You just kind of loosen up. So the guys don't you don't fight against it and you snap, right? Because that's the amount of force being used. So they'll probably take a guy or they'll trade for those, right? So,
well,
Dallas is a great player.
I think from our conversations over the years, I think you said Sean Desai was in Chicago when you were there, right?
Yes.
So everybody assumes the Eagles need a corner and that they would trade up to get one. When you watch the Eagles defense, is it a talent deficiency? Was Sean just not the right guy for this team? Was Fangio there when you were in Chicago, by the way?
Yes.
All right.
Both of them.
So give us a little.
Sean's
Oh yeah, Sean's a direct disciple of Big Fangio.
That's why I laughed at this.
Yeah.
Now, is Vic going to be much different from Sean? Kind of give us your take. I mean, you were an offensive player there, but you know these two men. How do you see that dynamic of what the defense might change to look like? And if they need to add a defensive player because they're deficient on that side, or was it more of a disconnect with Sean?
I think there'll be one cook in the kitchen this year because he's tenured, and older and established and a former head coach and a 15-year DC in the NFL. Sean Desai, guys, I think unfairly ripped apart.
I agree with you, Colin. I said this all the time. I keep hearing, and this is what you hear when you cover a team, Colin. When things go wrong and guys are let go and they're kicked out the door, then you start hearing the bad stuff. I keep hearing the word presence. You didn't have a presence. I'm like, and Vic will have that presence. Nobody can say that about Vic Fangio. He's been coaching
quiet,
forever.
Guys. This is a soft-spoken man in Vic. I'm talking about presence.
Yeah.
This isn't Dan Campbell where he walks in the room and you're like, holy
There's
shit.
different kinds of presence, though. It's a real thing because I cover Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz has a freaking presence. He takes over a room.
Yeah.
Even Jonathan Gannon, as a young coach, had a presence, a former player. Looked like he could still play. He still had it. And Sean's, he's got a master's in education. So he goes about it a different way. But I'm like, that's bull crap. I mean,
is.
Yeah.
Listen, I played for one of the best tight end coaches, I think, in the NFL, Brian Angelico. Brian Angelico is a 2-sport Division III athlete. Okay, he's 5. I don't know. Brian's probably 5'10". I don't know, whatever he is, overweight. I'll say that for him. He looks good. He's a good friend of mine. He lost a bunch of weight. He looks great. I think he's one of the best tight end coaches in the NFL.
He's in Minnesota now, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And he recruited me to Rutgers and Pitt back in the day. We have a long history. But Brian didn't play in the NFL. Brian's not that big of a guy. Brian's best attribute is to be able to relate to his players on a personal level and say, all right, man, here's how we're going to execute on it. And we got to rock and roll. Like, period. That's why I get all wound up about this, is players don't get enough of the blame, right? Because fans can't articulate the blame in the media side.
Well, they don't want to blame the players. They want their favorite players to be.
Well, I think a lot of more of it is they understand they can't do the player's job, but they think they can do the coach's job or the GM's job. Like, if you let me do that, I would have picked the right guy. If you let me coach this team, I would call the right play.
Yeah.
If you told me to block, I know I'm not capable of that. So that's where the blame goes to the person that they identify that I could do that job if you made me. And that's where I think a lot of that blame comes from. But, you talked about Vic. There'll be one voice in that room. And you guys are talking about Sean. the defense, and you said it, he runs a similar style of defense, but I guess different enough that they thought that bringing Vic in to run a similar style of defense was the right way to go.
What John said, they're bringing in the presence, right? They're bringing in a presence where the players are going to look and say, that's Vic Fangio, because they're pretty much what they're saying, I guess, through something that people are hearing. Presence is when stuff was hitting the fan and we needed a voice to be like, go run and make tackles and play with effort and energy. Sean was like, hey, we got to run and make tackles and play with energy. And we know that. That's a constant in the NFL. I'm assuming this is how it's going, right? I've been in these rooms before. You have Ben McAdoo who comes in, who's a presence like Vic, and swings a big hammer and is like, what the hell are we doing? And then you have Jeff Nixon, who's now the OC at Syracuse. And he was a kind of Matt Rule guy, came as a running backs coach. He played coach with the Niners, coach with the Eagles, Nix. And Nix came in and said, guys, we got to execute inside zone, right? There's different tones to things. And to me, I'm the player where you got to, like, they wanted someone, a coach, to really make up for the deficiencies of whatever that defense was. And they thought that it needs to be an MF session, if you will, instead of probably an educational session. And to me, it's just different styles. They wanted a bit. Vic's just got this like kind of Italian, broad-shouldered, kind of quiet, like too quiet where you can't even like have a read on him. The only time I connected with him in Chicago is when we talked about Italian restaurants, like all over the outskirts of Chicago, like in these little towns. He was great. Him and Vikings DC got fired 2 years ago. His son's in the NFL, coaching too.
Not Alan Williams. He was
he had some issues. I'm sorry, but long story short, he's a great guy too. I'm killing me forgetting his name. It's the morning, but long story short,
Ed Donatel, you're talking
Donatel.
Yeah.
So Donatel was his
DB's
coach. Yeah, and Ed's the best. Ed is the one. They're both a great guy, and they would go to these little towns.
Well, Ed's a big Fangio guy.
Yeah, so they run a lot of zone,
yeah,
and they put a lot of presence on the big boys up front, which is what the Eagles were doing a little bit last year, and they got away from it. So my point is, and I know I'm long-winded and we're off the rails, there's a voice in the room. Sean took the hit for last year. It's a shame. Hit his career probably pretty hard. And he's a smart, really, really smart person. Like, this is not someone who's not intelligent.
When you look at that Eagles, whatever the heck that was, both coordinators, did they take the fall or were they not ready for the job? They brought in two guys that are well established.
That's what I've
now.
said from day one. Scapegoats.
It is what it is. Like, at the end of the day, it didn't get done, right? I talk about this in Carolina. I think Matt Rule's an excellent football coach. People say he's a college coach. Well, we did the same things they do in New England and Baltimore. I know all the guys there. The same things. Literally the same. And even Matt says it. But we lost. So you're labeled as a college guy, right? Like, if we win, you can win, right? So at the end of the day, like, whoever's fault it was, the job didn't get done the way they wanted to get done, and it's got to fall somewhere. We can't cut all these players because it's going to be a dead cap hit, right? We can't cut. We got to trade a guy or whatever. That maybe we can do that, but like, no one's one player is to blame.
That becomes the realization, right? When you come from the college game, though, it's in college you can do X, Y, or Z. There's no salary. Well, maybe there's some money now, but the salary dictates sometimes decisions.
100%. Right? Look at some of these defenses like Pittsburgh, right? It's like 75% of their money on the salary caps on the defense side of the football. You better perform. Like, that coordinator better perform. Like, so there was holes going in the year last year. The coordinator
might not be able to make the player personnel decision he wants based on the salary that he's handcuffed with.
And by the way, from a player's perspective, Colin, because this is what I've heard from players throughout the years. What you want out of a coach, be a position coach, coordinator, even head coach, is to take it a little bit farther than where you can go yourself versus, 100%. If you don't have talent, you could be the best coach in the world. You still ain't winning. You might be a little bit better than what you would have been with an average coach or a mediocre coach. But
like, for
Bill
example,
Belichick didn't become a bad coach overnight.
No, that's ridiculous. Is he out of the league? Can he keep up with? Come on, he's nothing.
For example, and this isn't to, say that they should have or did or thought about it, but like James Bradbury is getting paid a certain amount of money. Well, we'd like to see Ringo or Ricks, but we really can't do that because we're paying Bradbury so much.
And he earned that money. He played really well the year before.
Yeah.
So that's the question is like, who's that
Right,
on?
but at no point during the season did the coach say, I couldn't, I'd like to have changed this particular position, but I couldn't because of what he was getting paid.
Oh, that's why the NFL is unreal because there's so many layers to it, right? Like, we got to put this guy in. Well, you can't. I'm the general manager. You're not playing him. I'm paying that person X. They got to be out there. I'm sorry, but you know it. All of our hands are tied. Every one of us. So that's the league, man. The league is what. That's what I always say. And there's great insiders. John's one of them. John knows a lot that he can't tell. I can guarantee it. But at the end of the day, I give it the 10% rule to fans. 10% of what you're reading, 10% of what you're hearing from a media conference, 10% what you're reading on Twitter is true. 10% of it is. But the rest of the 90%, I played this game in Carolina. I played it with the New York Giants when I was a rookie. I wanted to see. I followed it all on Twitter. I followed all the local news because I'm doing this stuff with you guys. And then I get to be in the building and do the math, right? And it's not discrediting the media or, hey, it's not. But the stuff that happens, somebody may get cut. No, well, he just got cut because of X. But there could be 50 reasons why, and we'll never know them because he upset a GM. He was late to a meeting. He did something to a worker, somebody at work. You don't know, right? So it's just that's the business. It is complex, and there's
we're seeing it on a day like today, Colin, where the last minute stuff that comes out before the draft, you're just like, what am I supposed to do with it?
Read anything.
The draft is the best because so many people have so much certainty. I know this guy, and it's like you either draft a good player or a bad player. There's development, there's system, there's scheme. Yeah. Jason Kelsey talked about it, Colin, at his retirement press conference. He said he played with two players that would have been successful regardless of scheme, coaches, philosophy, and he played forever. And he said two. He said Fletch and he said Jason Peters. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And everybody else is some dependent, including himself, on other things. Now, you might want to add Lane to that list, in my opinion. Maybe AJ.
Lane, but, for sure.
Certain guys, I think.
But that still shows you, though.
Still, though.
That's
very small number.
But think about this. He kept Lane out, and Lane's one of his best friends because he probably knows something, right? Again, the 90-10%, he gave you 10% of like, Lane needed this coach, or Lane needed this system, or Lane may have needed Howie Roseman, or Lane struggled with some mental health stuff, right? So maybe he needed the Eagles organization who was open to letting him take some time off. Other organizations would be like, are you serious? Right. So again, he's telling us something there, right? Like you don't know what it is, but there's that other, like, the iceberg, if you will, or you can't see the bottom of it. So that's a perfect example, John, of these guys. Like, so that's why you take best available, because the freaky guys are the guys that usually make it.
Yeah.
How cognizant are the players in the moment of the front offices and that kind? Is that something that, like, once you're kind of older, you're like, man, those guys control? Like, when you're young, are you as cognizant of like how Philadelphia does their job and how Howie Roseman is thought of around the league, or how much you guys think about that in the moment?
That's a great question. I think it just depends on the player, right? Like a guy like me, I become friends with everybody in the building. I start getting, I start talking to people, different things. People start asking you opinions about players.
You're looking for those breakfast spots. I always saw that out in Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly. That was great. Connecting with the fans, different things. So like, it just depends on the type of player. Some guys literally put their head down, don't say a word, and come to work. Right. And then they come in at 8, they leave at 5, and they're unbelievable, right? Some like it's just like a normal workplace, Mike. Some people are like, oh, what are they doing? What's going on in HR and marketing? What's going on up there, right? Or some people are like, no, I'm just going to show up and be the best version of me. And right, so it's literally a microcosm of society of like, some people are curious like I am, and like not a mole, but like someone who's like talking to my boys in the front office, like, hey, what's going on? What are we doing? Trade deadlines,
right?
And then some guys are like, coming in dressed to the nines, like they're going to,
like Monte Smith, baby.
For practice, right? Cam Newton was like that. Hassan Reddick, right? And then some guys are like me, coming in, look like you just you know, whatever, you're going on spring break, you got a polo and khakis on, you know, whatever. It's just like, it's a whole different thing. It's just like society in a way. I say it's a healthier version because we can have,
I'm with you. I've talked about that for a long time. At Colin Thompson TU, make sure you follow Colin on X, Twitter, at Not For Long Media, not the number 4 Long Media. Does a tremendous job. Superstar in this industry as well, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, the guys, you know, Kelsey was one of those guys, by the way, the flip flops, the Ocean Drive shirt, just showing the one time he's got he had the premiere of his Amazon show, Colin, and he forgot his jeans. He had to call Kylie to bring his jeans for the premiere.
Everybody loves that. Everyone's like, he's just like us, you know, like, which is great. And that's all people want as fans. I think
and he just announced he's doing his bartending thing down at the OD again this year. And of course, that's a charity event, but it turns into him playing flip cup with the fans. And
people are saying I had a buddy there, Sam Boner Mick, and Mick was like, I think he easily had 50 plus beers. 50 plus.
Yeah.
I mean, he's paying. And another thing too is Kylie's behind him. This was from my buddy Jimmy Morrissey, who works the event. I think Jimmy told me 50 plus. Mick was there and shot a beer with him. But my buddy Jimmy worked the event, plays for the New York Giants now. LaSalle high school kid, played at Pitt. And Jimmy's like, dude, like literally Kylie's behind him. They're like, yeah, West Virginia. Nice school, Mike. So
Zach Frazier getting drafted early second round.
Okay.
Yeah.
So literally like Kylie will be behind him. And I'll be like, hey, Jason, I'm gonna shotgun a beer. I wasn't there last year, right? And I think they raised like a couple 100,000, right? Crazy. And first off, other thing, side note, what Jason did for guys like me to be able to talk about drinking in public and eating sandwiches and all that, like you could do that as a player before. You could not. When I said I'm going to start a podcast in 2017, I think I was the first NFL player to have one. My agent's like, you're nuts. You're crazy.
I said you're nuts. I said, I've asked you that question 100 times. I go, how does that go over in buildings?
Yeah, I don't care as long as you play well.
And you were the first for people that don't know.
Yeah.
You were the first. And
I was,
obviously Jason and Travis have
they've
become, you know,
a lot of guys have, John, which is great. New media. But to finish my story, like Kylie's right behind him. When all three of us walk up to Jason, like, Jason, we want to chug a beer. Great. Kylie's like, no, Jason, how much is it? And Jason will be like, sorry, guys, it's $250 a guy or $150 a donation a guy to chug a beer with me. And so Jason's just like whacking beers and he just raised like $1,000 like that. So like it's unbelievable. And it's so cool.
Charging people to chug with them.
It's great for charity because if not,
that's
just get bombed.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It is great for charity.
For the kids.
So are you still into the draft? Are you going to sit here and digest this whole thing the next 3 days?
I'll be watching the whole thing. I'll probably, get emotional at one point in time of it. I'm like, it's whatever. And then all of a sudden I'm like, man, I'll be so into it. I can't wait for it.
How good is Brock Bowers, fellow tight end? How good is he?
I don't even think we really know how good he is. I think we see how good he is in college, and he's out running guys, and he's physical. I mean, he's like Kittle to me. But like, I think there's a ceiling on him that we don't know, and I think we're going to see it in the NFL, and that's what makes people excited. You're like, man, this cat could be something different. I mean, he's going to probably be a piece of an offense where they probably already have some players already, which is great. Sometimes when you're drafting the first 5 picks, right, you're like, man, I got to carry this load, right? Saquon Barkley in New York. People aren't talking about how good that guy's going to be in Philly, but that's neither here nor there. Brock is a monster, and you know what I see happen this year, guys, personally? I think people are going to take this model of the Houston Texans, where they have a high pick, and they're going to mortgage the future to go get another high pick, to a player they like. I do. I think that's really was. I mean, look what Houston did. Hire the right head coach.
They did a hell of a job. They turned it over
quick.
Boom.
And that sold out playoff game. I mean, the team looked great. And the players are getting hurt everywhere, but Will Anderson's upright. CJ Stroud's upright. Great head coach, great GM, Caserio, who was all behind the scenes in New England for the entire Bill Belichick era there, for a lot of it, at least from a coach and front office perspective. He was the GM when Bill had a coach, essentially. So, I think I see it. My opinion on the draft is someone's going to trade up and take a guy or two there, like middle. I think it's going to be an aggressive year. It always is. It's getting more aggressive. The NBA started it. a couple years ago, a free agent.
That's my Sean Payton theory. Sean says, if you like a player, go get him. Go get him,
man. Go get him. Well, we'll see who's going. I would imagine Howie Roseman will be going and getting somebody. He will not sit at 22 tonight. Who will it be? Well, we have just hours to go to find out. Colin Thompson spent the time with us today.
Analytics,
not for long media. And check him out, Colin Thompson, on his Not for Long media platform. And kind enough to get up a little early. Where are you, in Florida?
I'm in Central Time, too.
Yeah.
So I'm on the grind here for you guys. West Florida. You get
West Florida.
Destin. Nice little spot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, my in-laws got a great little spot here. So take a little break from the training. Start training
Central
again.
Time?
Isn't that crazy? It's the best.
That is crazy to me. I did not know that existed.
What is it, over in the Panhandle? What's it in the
Panhandle? Panhandle. Yeah.
Between Panama City and Destin is where I'm at. Yeah. So if
you're living the dream, by the way, Colin. Where you're Annapolis, Cape May, Florida, the Panhandle. You're everywhere I want to be. I'm stuck in South Jersey.
Hey, and I'm very fortunate to do this, but it's coming to an end soon. We're about to have a little girl, so it's the end is near in late July for me and my wife. Funny story, quickly. Gil comes down to Annapolis. I'm like, Mike, I'm in, buddy. We're going out, drinking, coming to the Navy game, ECU. His girlfriend's ECU grad. He bring the kids, the whole nine. Morning of the game. Right. I'm going to get up. I'm going to meet Mike down at the tailgate, start a little day drinking, morning drinking. Exciting, right? So my wife comes down during breakfast. We haven't really talked, nothing, whatever. I'm going to go make breakfast. Comes down the steps, holds a pregnancy test in front of my eyes. I'm pregnant. So I was like, Mike, tough day. I couldn't say anything yet. We just found out. I'm like, sorry, buddy. Next time.
Well, congratulations, girl dad coming.
My buddy had parked at his house, so we walked to his house with my buddy to get the car, and I knocked on the door, and his wife answered the door as if like, what are these people doing at our house?
I pretty much didn't. I was like, yeah, no plans today. We're just going to relax.
I was a couple sheets to the wind, by the way. So
hey, that's fine. It was excellent.
We were out there, as he said, all morning at the tailgate. I was excited to see my buddy down in his stomping grounds. We were going to do the whole Annapolis thing.
Broke my heart, Mike.
Hey, congratulations to you, buddy.
It broke my heart, Mike. So,
Colin Thompson, everybody. Thanks, man.
Thanks guys.
Bud. Colin Thompson, Not for Long media. Great stories there. Great insight. Sean Desai.
Always has great stories, man.
Yeah, he played in Chicago, which Sean was, I guess, an assistant at the time. He was the coordinator for when Vic left, but he wasn't the coordinator at that
1
point.
year. No, but he wasn't the coordinator then. I always, Colin got to be with the Vikings last year, and they got this brand new facility. I talked to him about that.
He loved it there.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
he loved it there. Yeah. All right. So when we come back, we're going to get down and dirty with Andrew DeCecco from Inside the Birds. He'll give us a lot of insight on the last couple hours before the draft and what the Eagles could be thinking and doing. That is coming up next here on Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Happy Draft Day, Birds 365 viewers. Johnny Mack, I'm Mike Gill. As we take a look at the Eagles at 22, it's been a checkered past for them in this area of the draft. Of course, Andre Dillard at 22. They got Jalen Reagor at 21. They've had some misses in this area last year. Nolan Smith was number 30, a guy who didn't get on the field all that much. So not a lot of production from players, John, that have been drafted in this particular area of the draft, which makes you wonder whether Howie Roseman says, you know what, like offensive linemen, I hit on those guys. I hit better when I move up. Let me go to the area I hit better at.
Well, it makes sense as far as the hit rate. The higher you go, the easier it is, at least when you start talking about position players. When you have quarterbacks, it's a little bit different because guys get pushed up the board. But, yeah, when you're top 10, you got a real good chance to hit if you're getting a position player. And when you don't, it usually has something else to do with then – missing on a guy's talent level. It could be off the field stuff, work ethic stuff, 100 million different things, as Colin kind of pointed out. But yeah, it's easy at the top. And as you go past every year, we talk to these draft guys and former GMs, and Randy Mueller's a friend of the show. I talked to Mark Dominic, Mike Tannenbaum, Joe Banner over the years, president / wasn't the GM, but, heavy influence. Every year it's like there's insert number 17 to 20 real first rounders. Jody used to hate when I used that term, because literally there's 32 of them, but there ain't 32 guys who deserve to be first round picks in the NFL. And the number usually is 15 to 20. And if you're at 22,
who have first round grades or talent.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're at 22, you're outside that window. So it becomes more difficult. And this year, Mark Dominic had the most at 23. A lot of guys were really short this year. So for most people, there's a big drop off. And that's why Howie probably wants to get to a point where he gets a player that he thinks is better than that drop off.
Well, it'll be interesting because, by the way, Andrew DeCecco is going to join us in about 5 minutes from now. He did his Eagles only mock draft over at InsideTheBirds.com. Now, this was 3 days ago, John. How things have changed. He has J.C. Latham going to the Eagles at 22. Let's get your thoughts on how much of a possibility that he would even be on the board at that situation.
No shot. You've heard all the talk with JC coming up. Yeah, things move fluidly, potentially going to the Chargers. Now, if the Chargers don't take him, I think there's a chance he starts to fall a little bit, because I think they'd be overdrafting him. But even at that point, I thought he was one of the guys. There were 4 guys I focused on. On the offensive line, it was Latham and Fautano. In corners, it was Mitchell and Arnold. Those were the 4 guys that I think are in the Eagles' sort of cloud of prospects. And you might have some outliers. Brock Bowers, for instance, if he begins to fall, at some point you got to say, all right, that kid's so talented, let's think outside the box. And maybe even Latu, who's a really good player, but will probably get dinged a little bit because of medical concerns. And the Eagles might not even have.
If Latu, let me ask you about Latu, because he's the guy I gave you yesterday as one of the 3 guys that I would be happy on Friday morning that we're talking about. But if Latu didn't have the medical concerns, what are we talking about here?
I think he's in the conversation with Dallas Turner to be the first guy off the board defensively. Yeah. If he didn't have any medical concerns. And I could argue he's ready to play. He's a more finished product than Dallas Turner, I would argue.
Okay, well, let's see what Andrew DeCecco thinks. My buddy from the Inside the Birds platform, InsideTheBirds.com, Inside the Birds podcast. I know you guys are doing a bunch. I'll be talking to Andrew today for Football at 4, so we'll expand this conversation. But it's good to see you, man. I haven't seen you since the Super Bowl.
Good to see you as well.
Ago.
I am in a coffee shop right now. I just finished up with a Fanatic, and I grabbed some free Wi-Fi here in the coffee shop.
Nice. Coffee shop. Yeah, you're blowing up on the Fanatic. I knew you win, Andrew. I knew you win, buddy.
Come on, man. Come on.
Andrew did the 8 o'clock hour with Andrew and John over there. He'll be on at 4 o'clock for Football at 4, as he is every Thursday. We were laughing because your mock draft, Eagles only 3 days ago, I put that caveat out. J.C. Latham was your pick, but it seems that he might not last past number 5 now, Andrew. How things change so quickly in this draft world?
According to mock drafts or NFL personnel, that's what it comes down to. According to mock drafts, he's going a little bit higher, but I sort of have him slotted anywhere from 15 to 25. He can go anywhere around that area. I didn't think that it was that much of a reach, especially if quarterbacks start coming off the board early. It's going to push a lot of talent down the board. I think Byron Murphy's going to go a little bit earlier than some are expecting, maybe even as high as number 8. Then you have
he's in the conversation to be that first defensive guy, Byron Murphy. We don't talk about him enough. He might go.
He was my pick when I did the mock draft with Jeff and Adam for Inside the Birds. I picked him going 8 to Atlanta, which could shake up the whole top round and, in my view, push a lot of talented tackles down the board. Could be J.C. Latham.
Yeah, and with Latham, to me, if he doesn't go 5, and Jim Harbaugh's a little wonky. So a lot of the guys, Albert Breer, a lot of plugged-in guys, DJ, I think, a lot of plugged-in guys are connecting Latham to the Chargers. If he doesn't go there, though, I think he's right back into the realm of where Andrew thinks he's going to be. So I think it's basically one team that's a little bit wonky with Jim Harbaugh, and they might take him over Joe Alt, which to me is insanity, but that's me.
Joe Alt is the safest lineman, but I think the one with the most upside, you could look at Mims, who's going to go later in the first round. Latham's a player who I really like, and Troy Fautanu is my favorite offensive lineman in this draft class.
I think Fautanu. Here's my cloud of prospects to trade up for. So give me your thoughts, Andrew, for the Eagles. Latham, Fautanu, Mitchell, corners, Terry and Arnold, perhaps Latu if he's got medical clearance, which none of us know. That's my cloud of prospects for a targeted trade up. Anybody you want to add, remove?
I would say Talisa Fuaga from Oregon State is a player who I think could play. Well, he's played right tackle, but I think he can play guard. He's a nasty finisher. moves really well and could be a player that the Eagles consider. And he's more of a natural fit at right tackle. Latham is a good player as well, John. I like where your mind at is there. But for me, I would trade up for Fautanu. He strikes me as a quintessential Jeff Stoutland offensive lineman with the versatility, the athleticism, and the nastiness in which he plays. And he has, to me, Eagles written all over him if he falls within striking distance.
Yep, he's probably. I gave 3 guys that I would be happy with on Friday. He's the second of the guy. The other guy we talked about right before you came on, Andrew, was Latu. And we were talking about if he did not have the injury concerns, what level of prospect are we talking about? Where would his name be being talked about as a draft prospect?
Number 8, I think he goes to the Falcons if he has a clean bill of health and there's no medical concerns. That being said, not every team's going to sign off on Latu as being someone who they feel comfortable selecting. You may even see war rooms that are a little bit conflicted in that. Some may find that he's all right, and then there might be others that feel it could be a potential risk down the line, and he may have a short career as a result of that. We have to see where the Eagles lie, and if he starts to fall, I mean, I think that he would have to be in heavy consideration for pick for 22. But if other teams pass, you have to wonder if the Eagles would as well.
By the way, they've shown in the past that they've shown in the past that neck injuries have been something that they've been leery of.
And by the way, right before the last day that they could bring players in for 30 visits, which was April 17th, they brought him in right around that time. Yeah. And that was really for medical, to get some more medical background to make sure that if they had any questions, it was answered going into the draft weekend. So he's obviously somebody that's going to be highly thought of in the Eagles war room, and we'll have to see if that comes to fruition.
All right, I want to talk day 3 because nobody knows the draft better than you locally, Andrew, and that's interesting to me because what I think is going to happen is sort of that cloud of players. They're going to get one of them, and they're going to have to move one of their second-round picks, and so not even focused on day 2 more than day 3. Here's what I need from you. I need an all-ball linebacker that can compete with the worst position group on the team. So we're not talking about, Brian Urlacher and Derek Brooks here. You got to compete. I need a running back, a backup running back, because you have no depth behind Saquon Barkley and Kenny Gainwell. And I need a third receiver. I need somebody relevant in that third receiver conversation. That's a tall task, but that's what I need from Andrew DeCecco. Oh, did we lose Andrew? He froze up on us. Hopefully that coffee house Wi-Fi will.
Now, isn't the coffee house supposed to have?
They're supposed to have tremendous Wi-Fi,
right? Isn't that the whole purpose of the coffee house?
Bring him down and bring him back up. See if it works.
The whole purpose of the coffee house is that you get optimal Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you would think you have to have top tier Wi-Fi if you're going to be selling coffee, don't you?
Yeah, because you're essentially inviting people to hang out in your joint to drink coffee and do your work. You can't have flimsy Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and you're basically a makeshift office for a bunch of.
Well, I know Andrew's not here, but I do have his Inside the Birds mock draft up, so he can speak on this more because it could have changed. But you asked for a running back. He gave you Dylan Lawbay from New Hampshire as a running back with pick 210. As a linebacker, let's see. He has Cedric Gray of North Carolina. That's pick 120.
Oh, I picked Cedric Gray in mine. Yeah.
That would be the
exact same pick,
120,
120, 4th. Yeah, Cedric Gray.
That's
Love that pick.
Oregon safety Evan Williams at 161. That would be one of your 5th rounders. Leonard Taylor III, a defensive tackle at 171. The defensive tackle position to me is pretty interesting because of the Fletcher Cox retirement. And I'm sure they have some thought that would be a possibility, but how much do they trust what's left over in the room? You would say, well, Jordan Davis was a first-round pick. Jalen Carter was a first-round pick. Milton Williams. Fletcher played a lot of snaps last year. Someone's going to have to replace all of his snaps. And then if it's, let's say Jalen Carter replaces his snaps, someone's then got to replace Jalen Carter's snaps. If you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. No question about it. I would say the one thing, if you go back to the combine, though, Howie actually mentioned, he rarely does this stuff. And he said, if I'm being honest, if there's one position that is probably not going to be high on the want list, it's still defensive tackle because they have so much young depth and players they like. And it starts with Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, as you mentioned, but also guys like Marlon Tuipulotu and Moro Ajomo, the Eagles really like. So while they need to find those snaps, that Fletcher, I think a lot of them are going to be elevated onto Milton Williams, and Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter are going to play more as they get better with conditioning. So it's a mix between the three, but they also like Tuipulotu and Ajomo, and it's like, is the prospect on day 3 going to be better than those guys?
Well, and that's
maybe.
And those guys, like, I like Milton Williams. I think if he gets more regular playing time, a bigger role, then he should have more of an impact. And Ojomo is another interesting prospect. Those are the guys I talked about, similar to the cornerback room, is do you take a guy to just throw another guy in the mix when you have this group of younger players that you like?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm not taking a cornerback on well, I shouldn't say that. I might take a slot cornerback on day 3, but I'm not going to get a better prospect than Kaylee Ringo. So, and even
we were talking about this yesterday on the radio, which was we forget Ringo was a 4th-round pick. Ricks was a guy who got playing time. Josh Jobe played a lot last year too. He's another guy that
he's kind of forgotten because he got lapped.
Yeah. Tell you about Ian Rodgers here. Mekhi Gardner. You mentioned the guy they signed from the Raiders.
Tyler Hall.
Hall. So there's 5 guys right there. Like, I don't. How much more competition do you need at that? So, and it's not like those guys are old guys. You got a lot of younger players.
No, they're all young. They're all very young.
Those guys are about the same age as many of the prospects in this particular draft this year. All right, John, you can re-ask your question for Andrew.
Right. I don't know if you heard all of it, Andrew.
Sorry about
how
that.
Much you heard.
Sorry about that. Comcast internet issues, I was told, but
coffee house. We were talking a coffee house. You got to tell those guys they have to have rock solid Wi-Fi. People are
shout out to Sweet Java Cafe in Roxborough though on Ridge.
There we go.
Great folks over here. But I would say for day 3, John, a linebacker you want to look at is Cedric Gray from North Carolina.
Love it. That was my pick as well.
Love Cedric Gray. I think he could be available at 120. Could go late 3 along with Trevin Wallace from Kentucky. He's not going to go in the 4th round. I've seen him go all over the board. He's a day 2 guy all day. Cedric Gray would be a player that I would look at, very athletic. Now, you mentioned running back as well, right?
Yeah, running back and 3rd receiver.
Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State. He's a bigger running back, explosive. But if you're looking for a more of a complementary type of player to what they already have in Saquon Barkley, I would say Jaden Sheridan from Monmouth is going to go in the 6th or 7th round. He's built like Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles actually spoke to him at the East West Shrine Bowl, had a really long chat with him. And Kamani Vital from Troy is another player who has Darren Sproles' ability to catch the football. He's great in space and very explosive, home run hitting type of player. Those are guys that I would look at for that. And then for a 3rd receiver, in the 4th or 5th round, I would say Jalen Coker. He's a wide receiver from Holy Cross. Jaquan Jackson is a wide receiver from Tulane, who the Eagles have shown considerable interest in. He's 5'9", 188 pounds, very, very twitched up and good in space in the open field. And he could be that vertical slot, but he can also be somebody that you dump the football off to, and he's able to create yards that way, which they tried to do last season with Quez Watkins to not much success.
No.
Andrew, in this particular draft, the Eagles have 2 second-round picks, 50 and 53. In your mind, how valuable are those 2 positions?
Great question, Mike. And they're tremendously valuable. And I also think the third round is a money round in this draft, particularly for what the Eagles need at safety and linebacker and even edge rusher, situational edge rusher. So if they're able to acquire that, I would do everything that I could if I were Howie Roseman. But the second round, if you don't go a corner in round one, Mike, you're going to find someone like a Max Melton, who I've mentioned many times over your airwaves, Kamari Lassiter, TJ Tampa. Those are pretty solid corners that can step right in and help you. And if you look at what your board looks like if you're the Eagles, how big of a discrepancy is Terry and Arnold from Max Melton, right? Is it worth trading up and giving up significant compensation for a player like Terry and Arnold versus someone like Max Melton in the second round? Those are really crucial spots. You might be able to add a tight end too.
That's an interesting take, though. You just mentioned what's separating a Max Melton, a second-round pick, from a guy you might trade that 50 pick where you can get.
Is it worth it? Is it worth
go get an Arnold or a Mitchell? So would you say it's not worth trading 50 if you have to move up to get Mitchell or Arnold when you can stay at 50 and get a player like Melton?
Yeah, I think so. And there's no Pat Surtain in this draft class. There's not a lot of blue chip players, especially at corner. I don't see either player as blue chip. I see Quinyon Mitchell as the number one, the clear-cut number one, at least in my estimation. And he's someone who I think is a very good player and a difference maker. But how much of a difference maker is he? You going to be willing to fork over a second-round pick on a team that really is devoid of young building blocks for the future? I don't know that you could do that, especially when you can get a corner in the second round that could step in and help you from day one. Max Melton's a day one starter in the slot, and he can play outside as well. Explosive player, good ball skills. So, I mean, it all depends on where they had these guys rated, but it wouldn't surprise me if some folks have Max Melton as a late round one, early second round guy.
How many, you mentioned blue chippers, how many legit blue chippers in this draft does Andrew DeCecco have? And how many legit first round grades do you have? It never goes to 32, does it?
No, I'd say like 5 or 6 blue chippers and like 17.
Yeah, it's
17, 18 true first round picks.
I'm not in love. So if I can't trade up, it's always about the player. If you like a player. So if the Eagles like Quinyon Mitchell, for instance, we'll see. Go up and get that player. But when I think about 22, if I can't trade up, I want to trade down because I see a bunch of guys who are in the same mix, and I think you could pick up some value. Agree with that theory?
Yeah, someone like a Kool-Aid McKinstry, John, coming off the Jones fracture, is someone that you might be able to find at the back end of the first round. A Chop Robinson, depending on where you land on him, is a player that could go 25, 26, 27. Graham Barton, the offensive lineman, if he doesn't go 20 to Pittsburgh. I love
Graham Barton.
So do I.
I
know you do.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't go 20 to Pittsburgh, who desperately needs a center, he can play center, guard, or tackle. That might be someone that you consider later in the first round.
Who's your safest pick in the draft in the first round? That guy with the highest floor, so to speak.
Probably Joe Alt. I think Joe Alt's the strong draft with offensive linemen. Joe Alt's the safest player in the strongest position in the draft. He would be my pick.
And I would put Graham Barton second. That's my two safest players, Joe Alt and Graham Barton. And it's almost always offensive lineman.
Always have to say it's always the offensive lineman.
Yeah.
That you just feel like, hey, that guy can just do it for 10 years. He's got the technique already. He's got the footwork and great hand placement, and you don't have to worry a whole heck of a lot.
Well, that's part of it, Mike, because an offensive lineman is getting to a second contract. You know it. You know nobody's going to complain about paying a top-tier offensive lineman. You see all the hand-wringing at other positions. Well, can I pay this guy this? You never hear that with the offensive line. If he's good, everybody's like, all right. Second contract, bang, and they can be.
I believe they have the highest. They have the highest success rate of any first-round pick. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Andrew, we heard a lot of Nate Wiggins. He was a popular mock drafted player to the Eagles. That seemingly has dissipated somewhat. Cooper DeJean is the other guy. He seemed like he was a popular guy in that 22 range. Are those guys, though, in your mind, good fits for what Philly does?
It's a great question. I got this earlier today. I would say I've been a little bit down on Nate Wiggins as I've navigated this process. One, he's very slight build. We all know that. But he did gain 9 pounds for his pro day, reportedly. Got up to 182. You saw what happened to Emmanuel Forbes last season, being able to get bullied by some of the bigger wide receivers he was going against. And
he sees AJ in his nightmares. He sees AJ Brown in his nightmares. Yeah.
And you wonder if that's something to be concerned about, because he may not be able to put on weight. He may be one of those guys that you're constantly worrying about. Can he get to 185 and sustain that? I also didn't love some of his effort plays where it looked like he got some lapses and laziness potentially. I didn't like his lack of aggressiveness in some instances. But on the other side of that coin, fellas, he's very athletic, he's fluid, he has really good ball skills, and he's very technically refined. I just have some other concerns in terms of build and other aspects of his game. But Cooper DeJean is somebody who I view as a safety. And when you look at what Vic Fangio covets historically in his safety position, it's someone that has a very high IQ and can be versatile, in which he can play corner, safety, nickel, and he can take the football away. So he's a game changer on the back end. And you pair him with someone like a C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who is also a ball hawk, and all of a sudden you're doing something there, and you're able to get guys who can turn the tide on a given play.
You know, fit is an interesting discussion for me, Andrew, because I put a lot of stock into fit, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. That's obvious, but in scheme, philosophy, coaching, who are they going to be around? But even with the Eagles, and I think a lot about Vic and the defense they play. But I was talking to a GM the other day, and he brought up a good point. And I said, you know, you're right. They might not even have the same scheme next year, because if Nick Sirianni doesn't last, Vic Fangio's not going to last. And if there's a new coach, he's probably changing the whole stinking thing. So at least when it comes to the first round, I'm just taking the best player, whether it's defensive, offense. But then as you get to day 3 that we discussed a little bit, then I start looking at fits a little bit more. And I wanted to circle back to running back for this reason. I've always wanted to see a one-cut north-south guy behind this offensive line. So if they give you that definition, and I think they'll be more open to it because now they have Saquon, so he can handle some of the receiving stuff, hopefully, for their sake, a lot of it. Is there a guy that you like that is just north-south, one cut, bang, hit the hole, move the chains? Because I've always wanted to see that with this group and this offensive line, and we never get to see it.
Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State.
Oh, you brought the same guy.
220. He's a bruiser. He's a grinder between the tackles and pretty fluid. I think he has some – he's not going to hit the home run. That's not what you would be drafting him for. But he does have some burst and acceleration and pretty good vision. He's probably going to go rounds 5 or 6, I would say. But to fit your definition of what you're looking for as someone that can grind out the clock and salt away games and swap out for Saquon, he would be somebody that would be near the top of my list.
Hey, Andrew, other than top end, I guess, corner, right? Everybody thinks they need to get that younger guy to maybe be the next outside corner. Do you think they have enough depth that you like that you wouldn't focus on corners in those middle rounds, or are there corners in those deeper rounds that you like enough that you would be willing to add them to what you already have? Because you got a lot of young, interesting players already in that cornerback room, and you just added Isaiah Rodgers, another younger player.
It's a great question. So if they don't address corner on day 1 or day 2, which I don't foresee happening, I think they will, on day 3, there's not another name that I would add to the mix of who you already have. You have to continue to develop your talent. I thought Keely Ringo showed some good things. I really like what I saw from Eli Ricks, especially towards the end of the season. And you have Isaiah Rodgers, who you mentioned, and Josh Jobs there as well. I want to see what Josh looks like with a new defensive coordinator there as well. Those guys, I think you got to let them develop. But I do think that you need to add a premier talent on day 1 or day 2 to really elevate that group as a whole.
Safety is a little bit different from the perspective of, it's interesting to me because I'm a big Ringo guy. I think Ringo's got a chance to be a really good outside corner in this league if the Eagles develop him correctly and he gets a little bit more experience. And I think a lot of people are in my camp for that, at least a decent amount. With Reed Blankenship, because of where he started, Andrew, I feel like people are assuming that he's got a limited ceiling. I don't know. He looks pretty good to me as a developmental prospect. He played very well. And the biggest indication to that for me is that when he didn't play, because he had 3 short injuries, he got banged up 3 different times, missed games, including the playoff game. And when they didn't have him, they looked really bad. So that to me is a feather in his cap. Where are you with Reed Blankenship? Because I hear a lot of people say the Eagles need another safety. I don't know if they do. I'm fine with CJ and Reed Blankenship. Need some depth, but you also have Sidney Brown coming back from the torn ACL.
Well, I want to go back to something that you said, John, about him missing some time with 3 different injuries. That wasn't a blip on the radar because last season, the season before that, if you remember, he missed some time. He got hurt in the Giants game late in the season, and it looked like he was going to be done for the year. It ended up being like an ankle injury or something, and he only missed a few games. So you started to see maybe he's not able to withstand the rigors of the full slate of games. Sidney Brown's coming off an injury. The only sure thing you really have that I would say is C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Reed has been very solid. There are limitations to his game. I think he's solid in the way that a Marcus Epps was solid. Not going to be a game-changing type of player, but somebody you can win football games with, clearly. But I still think if you have a chance to add a premier talent, you can't just bank on the fact that you have those players in place. You have to swing the bat and get that player to really alter that room. CJ's a game changer. If you can get a game changer, another one back there, you have to do it.
All right, Andrew, the draft is finally here. This is Christmas Day for you. Is there a favorite fit for you for Philadelphia? Like, that's the perfect guy for what they need, and he will be there.
In the first round or throughout just at any point in the weekend?
How about both? If there's a first-round player that you think is the right impactful player, and then someone later on that you would say, man, I've been thinking about this guy, and he would be a great person in this spot for them.
In the first round, Latu would be the guy for me because I do think that there will be teams who aren't comfortable with the medical. And if he's there at 22 and you're the Eagles and you've gotten a really close look at him and you know that he's the best pass rusher in this class and you know that next season you only have Nolan Smith and Bryce Huff under contract, the Eagles have shown that they're going to be a forward-thinking franchise and pull the trigger. Now, as a player who I think would be a tremendous fit in round 2 or any point in the draft would be Junior Colson, the linebacker from Michigan. He's my top-rated linebacker in this draft class, and I know there's been a lot of hype around Edgerrin Cooper, and he's a great player as well. But you're starting to see a lot of people trend off of Edgerrin Cooper and start to veer towards Junior Colson. He's a player who could very easily sneak in the back end of round 1, just given the lack of depth at that position. He's a true Mike linebacker. He's physical. He comes downhill. But he's also very good at space. I think he's the best linebacker, at least in my opinion, in coverage, and he was the most consistent linebacker down to down in this draft class. He's the most ready to play and make an impact.
At Andrew DeCecco, make sure you follow Andrew X Twitter. This is his time of year. This is his ballywick. Does a tremendous job with the draft. Doing great work with the Fanatic as well. Where are you going to be tonight? Am I going to see you tonight, or are you doing live hits? What are you doing, Andrew?
I will be doing live hits. Me and Moshe are going to do a live stream right after the pick, so I'll be tied up with that. Unfortunately, I won't see you, but I'll be seeing you. I'll see you soon down there.
All right, and before you go, I want you to put on the Howie hat. 3 scenarios. They're trading up for insert name. They're staying put and taking insert name, or they're trading down to take insert name. So you got 3 different possibilities because it takes 2 to tango. They might want to trade up, but they may not be able to. They may be forced to stay at 22. They may say, you know what? I don't want this spot. Let's trade down if somebody wants to come up. A bunch of different avenues. You got 3 choices. Give me Give me a scenario. Give me a player for each scenario.
If they trade up, Seattle would be a team that I would look at. And if you're looking at it in terms of what players would realistically be available on the board, I would say Troy Faltanu, because I sort of had him penciled in to go to Seattle and fall right within that range. And that would be a player who the Eagles are obviously very enamored with, particularly Jeff Stoutland. If they hold firm at 22, John, I think that Latu would be the pick there. Because, like I said, I do think he would land there, and in most drafts, if he didn't have the medical, he'd be going in the top 10, and that's pretty much a surefire slam dunk. But if they move down and maybe add a third-round pick, which would be a tremendous benefit, especially in this class, I would say Graham Barton would be a name to look for.
I love it. I love you. I love you.
Kool-Aid McKinstry would be another player to look for who visited the Eagles. By the way, Kool-Aid McKinstry, I like him. He's a steady player, and there's something to be said for starting day one for Nick Saban. But he does a lot of things well, but nothing really exceptional.
Yeah. If I'm a day one starter, Grant Barton, right guard, bang, it's done.
Love him.
Done deal. Done deal.
Great minds think alike.
Andrew DeCecco, everybody. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast and platform for a lot of Andrew's work. And I'll be talking to Andrew at 4 o'clock today on the radio for football at 4. So we'll get a little deeper into this draft as the Eagles, by that point, we're going to just be hours away from the pick, 4 hours away from the start of the draft. And Andrew, I will see you later. It's good to see you, man.
Yeah, this was fun, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Have
Andrew.
a nice latte for Latu. How about that? You get a latte for Latu.
Nice. That's a pro right there, Mike Gill. That is
We've got a couple minutes left to go. A lot of people are streaming in, and we appreciate you sticking through. Hopefully you enjoyed Colin. I thought had great stories in the first hour, and Andrew, excellent on the draft. We'll finish up with some final thoughts next on Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey. official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES. Eagles.
All right, getting ready to wrap up a Thursday draft day edition of Birds 365. Johnny Mac, we've got a whole heck of a lot of nuggets that have been put in our heads as we get ready for the 8 o'clock draft
Too much,
tonight.
man.
What's the over-under on the time? That's always a fun one. What time?
I hadn't even thought about that. Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Well,
You're
I think
you're the math guy on this show.
Yeah, I think they're going to trade up. So 12 would be.
What do you get? 10 minutes a pick?
10,
or 15?
yeah, 10. They knocked it. Thank God they knocked it down to 10. So hour and 20 minutes. I'm going to go. I don't even know what time's it start. 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock is the 8 o'clock is the actual first.
I'm going to go right around 9:05. They're going to trade up.
Okay.
Because I think it's going to go pretty quick. I hope Chicago doesn't. But, even when they start the broadcast, they want to wink and say, all right, we got to set the stage. And they say, hold off a little bit. So Chicago.
Well, maybe Caleb Williams' college coach said he wasn't at his birthday party.
Yeah. Draft
Something
day,
like
baby. And I tweeted out this morning, I hope, is it Jeff Carson? I think it's Jeff Carson. I hope no matter who your favorite team is, I hope he's trading with Jeff Carson from draft day.
It looks like, by the way, yesterday, Amon-Ra St. Brown got a mega deal, and your buddy Joe Banner already jumped in to throw, the dirt over poor Devontae Smith, saying, "Who let him sign this deal?"
Well, I said the same thing. I'm insane. I was talking with Jody leading up to the Devontae Smith thing. Look, I don't know why, if you are Devontae Smith, you would not wait for Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Ayuk, because they are going to reset the market and all the, not that he's going to get as much as those guys, but the old rising tide lifts all boats. But, he's happy here. Give the Eagles credit,
Well, there is some reporting, Howard Eskin, saying the Eagles are in contract talk with A.J. Brown. Are the Eagles trying to say, we need to get ahead of all this craziness or just join the craziness?
I think the Eagles have been doing this since the days of Joe Banner. It's ironic that Joe criticizes everybody now for signing early. He wanted to get everybody signed early when he was running the Eagles. And that's the reason. Now he's in a different role doing media stuff with the 33rd team. So he's saying that's a bad idea for the players. When he was running the Eagles, it was a good idea. And that's what the Eagles continue to do. And he's right. He's right on both sides of the fence. The Eagles should do what they do and target players. Even Landon Dickerson, same thing. People think that's a big deal. It's not. It relatively speaking, it's a big deal. You understand what I'm saying? When it comes to fruition, he will be underpaid as the other guards go above him. That's
By
just
the
the way
way,
it works.
Penei Sewell signed yesterday. Very telling to see the list of the top 10 offensive linemen. 3 Eagles on that list of the top 10 paid offensive linemen. And you see what they value. Think about that tonight. Think about that tonight.
It's hard to explain to people when they see in the moment, like Jordan Mailata's extension, that is very team friendly. It is very big, but it's very team friendly because you're going to see as other players, other big time tackles, and you just saw it with Penei Sewell, numbers just going to go up and up and up and up.
All right. We both don't think they're going to draft at 22. So, John, what's going to happen?
They're going to trade up to 12 or 16, and they're going to target a specific player. So to me, the only question is, are they going to target cornerback, and that would be Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold. I'm leaning more towards Mitchell. Or are they going to target offensive linemen? My 2 offensive linemen, Latham might go 5 overall, so he's out of the equation if that happens. And the kid from Washington. So those are my 4 players to focus
Is there
on.
one player whose name we haven't talked about or no one's mocked that the Eagles have kept under wraps, and that would be the player?
Well, I've said the wild cards would be Bowers and Latu. But Latu was all medical. That's Arch Tenoda's column. If he clears them, I think he's in the mix, in the cloud of prospects. And Bowers is one of the few. You just heard it again from Andrew. There's very few real blue chip players in this draft. Brock Bowers is one of them. If he starts falling because nobody wants a tight end, I think the Eagles will say at some point, we got to go get him.
All right, there you go. So spoke it into existence. We'll see what happens. Tonight, 8 o'clock, the draft starts. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., the look back at the draft begins right here on Birds 365. For John, Mike, this has been Draft Day edition of Birds 365. Have a great draft night, everybody.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.